Welcome. Wait a few more moments as some other folks trickle in, but excited to have everyone here this morning. Have a good program ahead of us. All right, looks like we have a pretty good crowd, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mainline Chamber of Commerce Recovery Resources live virtual event, Competing Priorities and Culture in a Competitive Environment. My name is Chad Palank, and I'm the Regional Manager of Business and Professional Banking for M&T Bank. It's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning. On behalf of M&T, very excited to have the opportunity to partner with the Chamber and co-sponsor with our good friends over at Brinker Simpson to bring this relevant content to member businesses. Having spent a lot of time over the past 2 years talking about payroll protection and the different pandemic-related loan programs, feels really good. I think it's a great sign that we're now fully talking about recovery, navigating the path forward, sharing ideas about the ever-evolving future state of the workforce, whatever that ends up turning out to be. I place high value on the partnership M&T has with the Chamber, as I know many on the call do, particularly as we ventured through some pretty uncharted territory over the past 2 years. Being able to interact in forums like these, it gave me comfort that I wasn't alone, that we're not alone, and learning and sharing these best practices with other leaders, really critical during the pandemic. And perhaps it's even more critical now as we move forward together. I'm sure I'm not alone in seeing the future success of our businesses being highly dependent on people. More specifically, as employers, how do we build and maintain an environment that retains, promotes, and attracts our area's most talented individuals? The ideas we're going to discuss this morning, diversity and inclusion, remote or hybrid work environments, successfully recruiting in a super highly competitive environment, they're all going to be critical, not only to the success of each of our organizations, but they're going to drive the continued prosperity of our overall communities. Again, thank you all for your attendance this morning. I'm looking forward to a great program, and I'll now turn it over to my friend Donna Stillwell at Brinker Simpson.
Thank you, Chad. My name is Donna Stillwell, and I'm a partner at Brinker Simpson & Company, a regional CPA firm located in Springfield, Delaware County. I'm also a member of the Mainline Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. Our firm is a full-service firm offering tax, attest, and business consulting services. I'm the practice area leader for the outsourced accounting and fraud and forensic department. In small businesses, we often see owners or employees who struggle to effectively balance several competing job responsibilities. They need consistent and trusted advisors such as our team at Brinker Simpson. We assist our clients with a variety of functions, including monthly and annual reporting, budgeting and forecasting, tax planning, cash management, and bookkeeping. Business owners can take comfort when their work is backed by our team of experienced staff and senior accountants and CPAs who focus on instituting processes and controls to maintain the security of their company assets. We also assist our clients with business exit strategies, valuations, and due diligence. Throughout the pandemic, our firm helped clients and non-clients throughout the country navigate the various federal, state, and local relief programs through the numerous webinars hosted by our managing partner, Bob Simpson, and our business development director, Kristen McCabe. Hopefully many of you were able to join in on those webinars. We continue today to assist our small businesses with PPP2 loan forgiveness and ERC credits. We thank you for the opportunity to sponsor today's events. Now, we would like to welcome today's panelists for the webinar portion of today's discussion about key workforce issues employers are facing. They are my fellow Mainline Chamber of Commerce Board member, Dr. Nicole Stokes, who is Associate Provost for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, University Professor of Sociology at St. Joseph's University. Adam Brown, an attorney in the Employment Practice Group of the law firm Stradley, Ronan, Stevens & Young. Another fellow board member, Christina Kelly, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, Essential Utilities, parent company of Aqua PA, and Kevin Duffy, President, Tesor Energy Systems. Our moderator today will be Bernie Desjardins, our President and CEO. I'll now turn it over to Bernie. Enjoy today's program. Thank you.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Chad. I'll start by saying that Brinker Simpson and M&T, as you were talking today, I was thinking about all the people that you have helped throughout this last 2 years, nearly 2 years. So I want to thank you for sponsoring this event today and for all the interaction with so many chamber members. But also add that this Recovery Resources Live brand we created shortly after the start of the pandemic, and there was a series of events, and we had an email that was going out as many as 3 or 4 times a week with content about how you could access federal loans, and there were counties were coming out with funding opportunities, as well as the state of Pennsylvania. And so we were sharing that information, and that was part of I'm constantly reminded I should be talking about the fact that we were named Pennsylvania Chamber of the Year by the Pennsylvania Association of Chamber Professionals, and the work that we did around Recovery Resources Live and that product is really a key reason why we were able to win that award in the large chamber category throughout Pennsylvania. We have a number of board members who are on this call today. We have CEOs of companies and presidents. We have senior human resource leaders. We have an attorney here with us today who can answer some questions. So we have an interesting mix. Nicole Stokes is an individual who has been a real new member of the board as a couple of years ago, and she spoke on a panel for the Society of Professional Women, and we were so impressed with her and the expertise that she brings. We asked if she would join the board, and we were very fortunate to have her. Chris Kelly's been on the board for a few years as well, a senior leader within Aqua. Kevin Duffy, a business leader who I have always been impressed in talking with him through the pandemic and how Tozer Energy has handled the work that they've done. And we've got a couple of essential businesses. So I want to get right into it and start asking some questions. Just to go through the format today, this panel discussion, we're going to be doing this for about a half hour, give everyone an opportunity to share some of their knowledge and expertise. And we are going to, actually, I think that just went into the chat. So later on in the program, we're going to encourage you to click the link in the chat and come with us into the meeting portion of today's event. So we'll be leaving the webinar and going into the meeting. We're going to have 2 breakout rooms there. We have some facilitators that we've asked to lead a discussion in 2 breakout rooms. We'll come back together and share some of the takeaways, and we'll wrap up this morning at 11:30 or a little bit before. So again, thank you all for joining us for this today, and thank you for our panelists for taking the time to be with us and the preparation time that you put into being ready for today. I'm going to start with a question for all, and it's going to be just a quick overview of what some of the key ways are in which your organization has been impacted by the pandemic over the nearly 2-year period since it set in. I'm going to ask Chris Kelly if she would please kick us off.
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris Kelly. I'm the head of HR for Essential Utilities. We are your local water provider, and we also own a gas company. We bought actually March 2020, right at the start of our the pandemic, and we sent about a third of our employees home. So the pandemic, as we are a utility, has hit us particularly hard in terms of our employee base. We have almost 3,000 employees, over 3,000 employees across a number of states in the Northeast region. The expectation, because we are your water and gas provider, is that we are there every day. And so obviously our field operations has been at work on site in our locations since the beginning of for 100 and something years. We've been out, and we still continue to be out. Our corporate group had spent some time at home. We did do a mix there, but because we are a utility provider, we feel pretty strongly that having folks in the office. We've had a long debate, so I'll be happy to talk about that. But long debate about working from home and in the office, but we've had a very mixed. We've come back pretty strong with developing a hybrid work schedule for our corporate employees that I'll be happy to talk about in a little bit more detail. So it's been a challenge, and we've had to deal with all of it. On a utility setting, we'll talk about vaccinations, but one thing about utilities, they have very strong feelings about government mandates and being told what to do. So we certainly have had to really negotiate and maintain a good rapport amongst a very tense couple of years here.
So we're already starting to touch a little bit on the culture of organizations, which I know we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into later on. I'm going to ask Adam to go next. Tell us a little bit about the Stradley Ronan experience. I think we've got to get you off mute there, Adam. There you go.
Thanks, Bernie. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. As I was attempting to say, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Adam Brown. I'm a lawyer with the law firm Stradley, Ronan, Stevens & Young. We are a law firm based in Philadelphia. We're considered a mid-sized firm relative to the law firms that have thousands of lawyers, but we actually have 200 plus lawyers. So we're not a small organization by any means, and we have hundreds of staff and others who work with us. We locked down, so to speak. We closed our offices on March 16th, 2020, and have been closed ever since. Have made a number of attempts to reopen and have just sort of pushed that date back several times. But in the immediate, in the beginning of the pandemic, we abruptly transitioned to remote work, which was a challenge because as a law firm, we were always in person. Some people did work from home at times, but the vast majority of us, including me, were in the office close to 100% of the time. So we did that very successfully and had excellent IT support and got all of our systems up and running and really didn't miss a beat. And it was a very impressive effort, collaborative effort by everyone. And at the same time, we were facing all kinds of new challenges that we had to help our clients navigate, like applying for PPP loans, which a lot of our business lawyers assisted clients with. And in my practice group, the Employment and Labor Group, there was new legislation coming out rapidly that required employers to give paid family leave and medical leave and other imposed other requirements on employers that had never been in existence really before. Uncharted waters for our clients, uncharted waters for us. So we had to learn that legislation, digest it, and then give advice based on it. And then we had to deal with all the other typical employment issues that were sort of magnified by the pandemic, giving reasonable accommodations for folks with disabilities and things of that nature. And we're going to get into that, I think, a little bit later. But we really pulled through as an organization in a way that was incredibly impressive. And we're still doing it today, but it's been a challenge, and I'm sure everyone would agree it's a unique and fluid situation.
Right. And that has been, I think, one of the surprises, particularly earlier in the pandemic, was how effective people were able to be working remotely, generally speaking. There are broader questions about whether that ought to be a full-time thing or a part-time thing, or companies that are requiring everyone would be in. It gets back to that culture question we're going to come into a little bit more, but let's open it up to Nicole Stokes, please, to go next.
Thanks, Bernie. Good morning, everyone. I'm here representing my organization, which is a mid-sized university. St. Joseph's University has approximately 7,500 students and over 500 faculty, staff, and other workers on campus and leaders. And the majority of our students are a residential student. So, go back to March of 2020, and we prepared our faculty and students prior to our spring break to say we may or may not be returning. And that preparation really did serve us well. We were, like many businesses, we closed from March of 2020 and then reopened with a staged reopening with on-campus work in June of 2020. And our university was one of two in the greater Philadelphia area open for the entire 2020-2021 academic year, with 40% of our students on campus living on campus. So we've had a blend of a hybrid of students and staff who were working on campus and also working remotely. We've also had to think about the academic delivery and make sure that we are maintaining rigor and also maintaining our academic product in a different delivery mechanism. We've also had very broad conversations about how do we maintain campus community when 60% of our community is not physically with us. So a lot of the engagement pieces are things that someone in my role has been called upon to consult in, talk about our overall culture. We're going to talk about talent acquisition a little later. It has impacted higher ed as well. And also in the height and wake of a contentious political season and a contentious election season. All of those things were happening simultaneously, and college campuses are no different than what Chris described. We also have an assortment of perspectives, points of views, and affiliations that we have to honor and be able to balance as an organization. So exciting 2 years,
Great.
to say the least.
Thank you, Nicole. Let's bring to Kevin Duffy and Tozer Energy Systems.
Good morning, everyone. Tozer's 270 teammates design, install, service, sell parts for Trane HVAC systems to schools, healthcare facilities, office buildings in South Jersey and Philadelphia metropolitan area. In March 2020, we shut down our office just like virtually everyone else, but our technicians, about 130 techs, continued to provide essential services. During the 3 months of the office shutdown, we continue to work from home, supporting our clients and our technicians. We guaranteed early on that there would be no layoffs so that the teammates know they could focus on doing their work and not look over their shoulder. We invested in MS Teams like many organizations so that regular meetings continued to happen just like they would have if we were in the office. We invested also heavily in technical training for those whose workload had declined. We hosted daily Zoom workouts and yoga classes for all teammates. I wrote a nightly letter to the entire team to just keep everybody up to date and informed of what we knew and what our policies were. We had to conduct parts operations by providing loading dock pickup so that other servicing contractors could have access to the parts they needed. And we held regular Zoom town hall meetings and had other social activities like cooking classes to continue to maintain contact. Like Chris, we had an urgent need to return to work in the office. So because our engineering and dispatch teams really depend heavily on each other. So we carefully planned for a June reopening. And I'm kind of glad we did, because I hear of the struggles people are having to get people to return now. But we had non-operations people were encouraged to continue working from home. We created workflow in the office, so it was only one-way traffic. We eliminated face-to-face meetings. Everyone had to wear a face mask when leaving their workspace. We invested in heightened barriers, so when people were at their desks, they felt secure. And we had wristband technology that buzzed on your wrist if you were within 6 feet of someone, but it also recorded an event so that in case we needed to do contact tracing, we could quickly identify who someone who was infected has been in contact with. And for the next year, we also provided lunch service to everybody's desk. So you could order your lunch at the end of the day for the next day, and we would have it delivered to everybody's desk. And that seemed to be appreciated. When people came back to the office, they were reticent at first, but I will say that by the time everyone got back in, they saw the investment in safety. They saw that we were taking it seriously. As a result, they did too. And we had a pretty successful opening and have operated since June of 2020, almost at full tilt.
Great. Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive response there, Kevin. I'm going to ask Adam, we're going to go right to the easy stuff. We're going to start talking about vaccinations, and I'll bring Adam in for that. I'll say that I have had so many conversations with decision makers who either are struggling with what to do, whether to require them, whether we've seen some companies pay for them. There's been a wide variety of responses, and it has been challenging. I'm sure everyone on this call, we have a pretty senior group of people who joined the webinar today with us in decision makers. So pretty sure you're all aware that the federal requirement that any company with more than 100 employees require vaccination, that was overturned by the courts. Although some companies already instituted it beforehand, and some are still possibly doing that, I think. This conversation is still taking place regarding that. Adam, tell us a little bit about what on the vaccination front, what are some of the legalities and what are you seeing?
Yeah, the emergency temporary standard, as you noted, Bernie, that OSHA put out in November is no longer in place. It was invalidated by the Supreme Court and then it was withdrawn. So it's no longer a requirement that large employers mandate vaccination. However, a lot of employers, as you pointed out, were already preparing to comply with that ETS, and so had a plan in place to make sure that their folks were vaccinated. And some of them are following through with that. Others are choosing not to. But as a result of the invalidation of the mandate, we're basically back to where we were back in the fall, and the conversations we were having a lot of last year, which is it's not unlawful to mandate vaccination unless you're in Montana or Tennessee, where they've effectively banned employer vaccination mandates. So it was always an option for employers to do it. It was never required, and it won't be now. But those mandates are fairly straightforward in that there are just a couple of exceptions you need to keep an eye out for, which are the reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and employees with religious beliefs who need an accommodation under Title VII. So there's no one size fits all approach to this. Different employers are doing different things. Some of the approaches are sector specific or otherwise have to do with the business that the employer is in. But the basic legal framework is essentially the same as it was before the ETS came out. And so you can do it, but you have to make sure that you avoid those couple of legal pitfalls.
How does an employer decide, Adam, whether to honor a request for an exemption on religious or health grounds? If the request is made, are they supposed to honor it, or how do you determine which ones you need to honor and which ones you don't? If you are going down the vaccination route, of course.
Right. Both of those statutes, the ADA and Title VII, contemplate what's called an interactive process. I'm sure a lot of people in attendance today are familiar with that term, but it basically just means that you have to have a dialogue with the employee. If an employee asserts that he or she has a religious belief that prevents him or her from getting vaccinated, the question really is whether that belief is sincerely held. And to determine that, the employer is allowed to ask questions about it, get information from the employee, and have a sort of give and take exchange about the nature of the belief. What you can't do is sort of presume that it's insincere. You have to, in good faith, have a conversation about it. I know a lot of employers probably are skeptical when they hear that, but the protection is actually fairly broad, and as long as the belief is sincere, there is protection under Title VII. And similarly with reasonable accommodations under the ADA, there's an interactive process. You get information about the medical condition, make a determination as to whether it is in fact a protected disability, meaning that it substantially limits one or more major life functions. And then you determine if the accommodation the employee has requested is a reasonable one, in that it doesn't impose significant difficulty or expense, and basically doesn't create an undue hardship. That's the legal standard. So those are the basic considerations. Obviously, it becomes fact specific when you get into individualized situations, but that is the basic framework.
Great, thank you. Chris, how did you deal with the essential utilities with the vaccination question? How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, sure. We actually started, we were strong proponents of getting vaccinated. We had done a lot to educate our employees. We brought in Mercer as our benefits consultant. They had physicians on staff too. We ran early on, overviews for employees to understand COVID in the beginning, when, back in, I guess, March and April of 2020, of what is COVID, how do you get it? So we did that. And then when the vaccinations came out, we ran educational sessions from these physicians as well. So our employees could understand how these vaccines work. Was there any danger? And that was really important, because I think, there's a lot of, it seems like eons ago, but a lot of information swirling around of this, and a lot of skepticism. And again, when you think about companies that are regional, in southern US, there was even more skepticism around vaccination. So that was one of the big things that we did. And then, we started early asking for vaccination status. I think we started in June of 2021 for vaccination status. Before that was really going around. And so, and we then made it mandatory as of August to start reporting. And so that started the churn in our company. Right, because we were toying with going with a mandatory vaccination, but it was actually probably a good move on our part, because it started the conversation early with our employees and gave us a sense of what we might be dealing with if we went to a mandatory route. So we then did an assessment, had managers do an assessment of employees, knowing that at that time we were about 58% vaccinated. What might happen if we went to mandatory vaccination? What kind of leave rate might we have? And so that helped us along the conversation of, listen, we're not in a position to, I said, this is like probably the worst time in decades to start, laying people off and looking for new people. So in a really tight market. So we followed kind of how the government timeline was, and we did not mandate the vaccination except for new hires. So all new hires as of November needed to be vaccinated. And I think that was an important point as people are looking at this, to do the assessment on your workforce. You have very strong feelings about the safety, and I absolutely am with you on that. You have to then balance it on talent and resources. And as a utility, we need to have continuous service every day. And so understanding that really guided us. And so we are at a point now where again, we have all new hires are vaccinated. We said it is a safety issue. Our vaccination rate is almost at 70%. So all these dialogues and all this consternation has pushed our vaccination rate up, which is good. But I would say, we don't intend to mandate it. We don't intend to go back and for employees that have chosen not to be, but we have for all our new hires. But I think, for anyone that's on this call today, as you contemplate something that really analyzing your people and where are you, I mean, it's a guess, but where you think they may fall out on that is important, because we had plenty of folks, and even on the corporate side. So you think, well, probably not on corporate, but we had very corporate folks, IT, finance, very strong feelings around this, that you let it know that they would quit if we went this route. So not that we want to be held hostage, but we're in the middle of some big technology transformation. So you had to really weigh all that together. It was not, I admire these airlines that were able to do these vaccine mandates, but for us, it was, I think we saw the potential challenge to operations and tried to proceed cautiously.
Great. Talk about, so the title of the program, Competing Priorities, right? The desire to keep people safe. You also need staff to do the work, right? So you find yourself in the midst of those tough decisions. Kevin, what happened with you and with vaccinations? What's happening?
Well, we decided to draw the line at customer-facing employees, whether it's a technician or salespeople, or that we made the policy that no unvaccinated Tozer employee will be face-to-face with a client. And so that required that our technicians have to be vaccinated because they only work at client sites. And we lost one person, and we've now got 3 people in the office who are not vaccinated, and it's worked out fairly well. But everybody respect that the clients are asking for this, so it was acceptable. It wasn't mandated; it was just a need if you want to see a client.
Yeah. Well, that term respect really leads well into my next question for Nicole Stokes. I want to talk a little bit about in person, and we're going to get to culture a little bit more, but in-person work environments, of course, we'll be talking about that as well, versus hybrid and fully remote. Setting aside the issues relating to COVID, Nicole, wanted to ask you, the level of attention being paid to issues relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion has really been huge. And some of the programming that the chamber has put on relating to those topics, the term respect certainly has come up a lot. But could you give us a sense of what you're seeing companies doing differently relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion matters, and whether that ties specifically, how that ties specifically into what we're dealing with this pandemic?
Sure. So again, going back in time, the timing of COVID happened at the timing of George Floyd, the timing of protests that were happening in a number of large cities across the United States and globally around issues of equity. And so many companies have been hiring people like myself to come in and to either do broad training with their employees, also starting employee resource groups that are around diversity, equity, and inclusion topics. There's been a greater accountability component to companies and corporations across every industry to talk about what's their positioning on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, what efforts have been made to not only hire diverse candidates, but also retain them and promote them into positions of leadership. So it's really been a moment of looking at organizations beyond just statements and vision, mission statements and visions, but moving more towards accountability and action and real indices of culture, right? To look to see how you as an organization are addressing issues that are prevalent in the common, that we were observing, watching our televisions. And so I think companies have approached this in a number of different ways. I think some have looked at, I love what Chris said earlier about assessment, taking stock of where their industry is, where their pockets of diversity growth could be, whether that's related to gender, whether that's related to race, ethnicity, citizenship, identity, and looking at that in relation to the positions that these people with diverse identities occupy. Also looking at the populations they serve. I mean, I'll speak to my own industry. College campuses are diversifying. The students that we serve are more and more diverse. And those students are looking at the organization structurally and saying, does it represent who you serve? And so I think that's the question right now, or the big DEI question that many companies, large and small and across varied industries, are dealing with at the moment, is really trying to show that they're trying to reflect the cultures and communities and clients that they serve.
Great, thank you. Chris and Kevin, you're both requiring your employees to come in. Can you go a little deeper into that, Chris, as to the decision for essential, and why not have some people work from home or
Sure.
hybrid
Right.
environment? Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And well, the way I look at it, because our employees certainly wanted, our corporate employees really wanted to be home. People were really concerned, right, what was going to happen. And so, what I've explained to them is that, we're on this journey. When you think about a company that's been around for 130 years, where everybody was in the office, we are moving through change. And so to even have this hybrid work environment that we have today was a major step forward. So that's one way to look at it. I don't know if they all looked at it that way. That's how I look at it. But what we did was, after we'd gone through a couple of iterations of in and out of the office, back in June 2021, it was, kind of numbers were coming down, and vaccinations were out there. We made a decision as a management team that we wanted to offer for the first time this flexible work benefit, so you could work from home or the office, but it had a lot of structure. Just like utilities, we got a lot of engineers and finance folks, and we like to have a lot of structure on our program. So the way it works is that everyone is in the office on Wednesdays. You're in the office 3 days a week, and you can work from home 2 days a week. Everyone is in on Wednesday, the entire company, so that if we want to have meetings, do things, that people are available to each other. And that then you have the flexibility on the other days. It's something that we looked at every single role. And so it was assessed, is the role appropriate? Can it work from home? And then we looked at the person. So, it's about 1,000 people we went through and did that assessment on. And then we also considered performance. You have to have good performance to be able to have that work from home benefit. So we were pretty prescriptive about it at the time. I have to say, it has worked to our benefit. I think that for us, having some of that interaction was healthy for a lot of our employees. Everyone's different, right? And I heard Adam say, his group, and certainly I think it depends on the culture and the types of staffing that you have, and how that work from home works, because you certainly have to be very communicative to make that work well. But I would say for us, I think, for some folks, that being by themselves and being home for such a long time was not helpful for them. And so that blend of being able to come in has been a positive. Certainly now, I think as Kevin said, they're used to it. It's been going on for such a long time that they're used to it. And I think they've, at some point we may look at, is it more than 2 days at home? Does it get to 3? But so far, I think our company's done a really nice job of delivering really stellar results and keeping people safe. We've had very, limited exposures, certainly from a work perspective. And so, I think that recipe has worked well for us. And it's held us in the marketplace because people are looking for flexibility. Certainly they're looking for more flexibility in that, but, we would have really been kind of tossed out of the talent race here if we didn't have some kind of flexible work environment. That's for sure. When we see you. So that's how we handled it. Kevin, if you want to make comments too.
Yeah, Kevin, what would you add to that?
Just, teaming and collaboration are very important to our engineers. A group of them sits outside my office, and I hear them all day long sharing, what part am I going to use for this? Design questions that I know were not going on by Teams or by, that just constant interaction. Our dispatch teams are constantly sharing technicians to help each other, and not being in a room affected their ability to work together and collaborate. So people got it, that it was really important for us to be back in the same space, reluctant as they maybe were. So early on, though, we allowed people to either choose a 4-day work week or work 3 and 2, 3 in, 2 out, if they had to take care of home care, et cetera. But then we've now gone to permanent. Everybody can work 1 day from home, and that seems to be appreciated by folks. And everybody gets it, because we've explained very clearly why it's important for us to be together for our clients' work product.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of companies obviously are still fully remote, and I guess one of them would be Stradley Ronan. So you are not requiring people to come in, although they are able to come in many cases. Adam, can you talk a little bit about how you think that affects the culture of the firm, and what do you think is the way forward for your law firm?
Yeah, we're fully remote at the moment, although you're allowed to come into the office and not required to, but you can. When we do return to the office, we are also going to have a hybrid system where you're in at least three days and you can work from home 2 days. We're supposed to be instituting that at some point in late February, early March, although again, the dates moved back a few times. But I do think it affects culture. Like Kevin was saying, that constant interaction, being in the same physical space, really fosters relationships in a way that virtual interaction doesn't. I think that Stradley thankfully has a strong culture and a positive collaborative culture where we all kind of like each other, and we had pre-existing relationships that were strong. And so we found ways to interact and maintain those working relationships. The bigger challenge is integrating new lawyers and new staff members into the firm. We've had a lot of lateral movement in the past couple of years, and we've had new lawyers just coming out of law school. For them, it's extremely difficult because the mentoring and the training that they would get in person simply is not happening in the way that it should be in a remote scenario. So there are a lot of challenges. I mean, there are workarounds, and we've been implementing those, and it's been fine. And I think that we'll come out stronger at the other end. But I do think that the culture of an organization, there's an adverse effect on it from not being in the same space. And that's particularly acute with respect to newcomers. Not as big a deal for people who've been around for a while. So I think that's going to be the challenge when we do come back and have this hybrid approach. I think we're going to have to pay special attention to integrating those of us who just joined the firm into the firm. And so we'll see how that goes.
There's so much we could talk about here. We don't have the time to get into everything, but just a couple of high level thoughts. In the chamber's perspective, we have people now coming in 2 to 3 days a week. I come into the office because I generally like to be here, but there might be a day a week that I might work from home. And I had a conversation with my team recently where I suggested, just assess the situation. Obviously we've got people who have childcare issues that they're dealing with. There's all sorts of things going on in our lives, as there always was, right? We're maybe more aware of them because we're in people's homes now. We see the dog, we see the child. And I think that balancing that and kind of trying to encourage my team, if you feel like I feel like you're more productive coming into the office, then be honest with yourself. And we've got a safe environment here. I'm confident in that. We don't do everything that Kevin did, which I thought was very impressive with his company. But we have room, people have space, we're careful, we have some precautions we've taken. So I feel good about that. But I think the next step, and I know some team members are on the phone, I probably haven't told them this yet, so this will be news to them. But I think the next step is that I'd like to have 1 day a week when we are all here for that collaboration purposes, and we all see each other 1 day a week. And so that might be a next step going forward. Although, for competitive advantage, I have to say, I'm not sure. I'm not pushing the idea that everyone's going to have to be here 5 days a week. I'm not pushing that. I think that's one of our competitive advantages as a workplace. We want to keep our great talent. We have a great team. We want to keep that team. I'm going to turn to Nicole for our last question here as we get ready to go into our meeting room. And I'll just say to everyone who's on this call, please do join us in the meeting portion once we finish this next question, because I really think it's a great opportunity. Everyone will get to introduce themselves. You'll be meeting people, you'll be connecting with somebody. That is a role the chamber takes very seriously, bringing people together so they can share knowledge. A lot of times the secret ingredient in the room, we've got an incredible set of panelists that are here with us, but the person who might help you most might be the person who's in that breakout room who says something that really clicks, and you want to talk with that person some more and understand it a little bit more, because it really relates to what it is you're going through and what you're dealing with. So I want to really encourage everybody to join us in the meeting room. We'll talk about how to do that in a minute. Going to Nicole, I just want to say, when I think about the programming we've done through our Society of Professional Women, which you were on a panel, that's how we met you, a virtual program, a live virtual event through the SBW, where you provide a presentation on inclusive communications at work. And that, by the way, I'll say that video is available if anyone would like to see that. It's a great program, and we can make that available to you. We talk a lot about respecting differences. And when you think about, can you tie this into a bow from a context of, different people come at their political views, of course, that are different, we haven't talked about that very much, which I'm okay with. There are the vaccination question, there's the work from home question. A lot of these things it just seems like they're minefields for employers these days. And can you punch in a little bit, summarizing thoughts around this idea of respecting differences and trying to make it all work, trying to find a way where you have a great workplace?
Sure. Just in listening to Chris and Kevin and Adam, all three very different approaches, but what they all had in common was really knowing their workforce, being not afraid to engage in those conversations. And I think that is really the recipe. None of them have asked me to consult, but if I were consulting them as their chief diversity officer, I would have said they've done everything right based on what I've been hearing. And when I say everything right, it really is coming back to, thinking through the positions that are in your organization and where the productivity sweet spot is, right? Where someone can be most productive. And then thinking through the identities and that the people in those roles hold, and what are some of their personal situations, and really having some consistency in the decision making. I think that is really the key to not stepping into the landmines or the minefields, as you put it. I think, we all balance these competing perspectives and some of the, childcare as well as caregiving broadly. It doesn't just have to be with children. It could also be with elder parents. Many of us are in the sandwich generation where we're also managing our elder parents. So it's all of the above. And I think, creating equity in your organization, and so that everyone feels that whatever their unique life circumstances are, their unique identity factors, that everyone has the opportunity to be productive and to have a solution on the table. And I think creating that open space for dialogue, creating policies that really do take into account all of those variables. Most times organizations are going to be on quote unquote the right side of the DEI column, so to speak. And that's the sweeping advice, but it really is the companies that are consistent, that really do take a hard look at their population and create space and room for all of the identities we all hold. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be okay. And I see Adam nodding. That's usually the case.
Yeah, that's great. Well, what's one thing that is great about this, and that's a great summary. Thank you very much. I always like to call you Dr. Stokes. Make sure everybody knows you have degrees that a lot of people don't have. At some point in the conversation, Nicole, it's kind of our thing. I will encourage everybody, please follow us into the meeting room portion of the program now. These individuals will all be with us, and they'll stay with us, and they'll be in different breakout rooms. So you'll have a chance to ask questions of them, have a conversation with them, provide your thoughts, your ideas, share some information with the group, and learn from each other. So the next step would be to click on the join Zoom meeting link that you have in the chat. And if anyone is having any trouble getting there, Nicole Stevenson from the chamber staff is going to stay here in this room, and you can message her, put a question in, or put something in the chat, letting her know you're having trouble, and she